They told us he was a rogue financier, but the math has never added up. How does a man with no financial pedigree lock down consulting contracts with the Rothschilds? How does a registered sex offender secure private sit-downs with the director of the CIA? For years, the idea that Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset was treated like a fringe theory. But now, with millions of pages of unsealed files, we have the paper trail. We aren't just looking at a criminal network anymore. We're looking at an intelligence operation. To understand this theory, we have to start with Alexander Acosta. He was the U.S. attorney who oversaw Epstein's 2008 non-prosecution agreement, or NPA, for the charges of soliciting prostitution and procuring a minor for prostitution, which were originally multiple charges. As the case involved multiple victims, he managed to get them pleaded down to a single count. Now, out of the 18-month sentence, Epstein only served 13 and got daily work release for 12 to 16-hour days, 6 days a week. The NPA was deliberately hidden from the victims and their attorneys. This violated the Federal Crime Victims' Rights Act, which guarantees victims the right to be informed of plea deals. It effectively ended the federal sex trafficking case the FBI was actively building against Epstein. And arguably, the most shocking part, not only did it grant Epstein federal immunity, it explicitly granted broad federal immunity to any potential co-conspirators. It is incredibly rare for federal prosecutors to give a blanket pass to unnamed accomplices in a sex trafficking ring, and it fueled speculation about just who the government was actively protecting. A former senior White House official claims in an interview with investigative journalist Vicky Ward that when the Trump transition team questioned Acosta on this sweetheart deal, he allegedly told them he was instructed to leave it alone. According to Ward's sources, Acosta was told Epstein was above his pay grade because he belonged to intelligence. Acosta denied this under oath, explicitly stating the answer is no. But Ward stands by her reporting, which leaves us with a massive question. If Epstein wasn't a spy, why was the U.S. Attorney General allegedly treating him like one? When investigators try to answer that question, one name comes up more than any other: Israel's Foreign Intelligence Agency, Mossad. Epstein didn't have these global connections by blood, but his partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, allegedly did. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was a billionaire British media mogul. While intelligence agencies rarely confirm their assets, it's been believed by journalists and historians that he had ties to Mossad, M16, and even the KGB before his mysterious death in 1991. The theory suggests Ghislaine and Jeffrey didn't just inherit Robert Maxwell's elite social circle, they inherited an intelligence operation. That now brings us to a man named Ari Ben-Menashe. He is a highly controversial figure who claims to be a former Israeli intelligence operative. Now, his background is up for debate, so keep in mind these claims are not hard facts. But his take is pretty interesting. Ben-Menashe claims that foreign intelligence provided the seed money to make Epstein look rich. They give him the tools to access high society, a New York mansion, a private island, and endless cash to burn. You have to play the game to win, right? But being rich wouldn't be enough because he needs information from these new elites in his circle. So they need to be comfortable. They need to feel like Epstein is on their side. But at the same time, Epstein needs dirt on them. This is where the trafficking ring allegedly intersects with espionage in what's known as a honeypot scheme. The theory suggests Epstein's goal was to make these powerful men comfortable, get them into highly compromising situations, and record it. And when it comes to the recording aspect, we don't have to theorize. We have witness testimony from Maria Farmer that Zorro Ranch, Epstein's property in New Mexico, was full of cameras, which makes sense. The cameras would be there recording, even if Epstein wasn't. So if he ever needed to collect a favor or keep a guest from speaking out, he had leverage. But his involvement in intelligence may have also been larger than we give him credit for. John Kiriakou, a former CIA agent, offers a theory that could explain his wide network. He suggests Epstein may not have been exclusive to one country, but rather what's called an intelligence peddler. To be clear, this is Kiriakou's hypothesis, and I know, I didn't know what a peddler was either. It never really came up in the James Bond movies. But it works like this. An individual reports to intelligence for multiple countries. In the case of Epstein, say one of his guests, maybe a politician, told him a bit of information that some other countries would want to know. He would then pass that information along to intelligence for multiple countries. Each time that bit of information is passed, Epstein would collect a fee. Multiply that several times by whoever he's reporting to, and now that bit of information is making bank. Now, this is purely an example to explain how that type of intelligence works. But we know Epstein had access to these wealthy and powerful men from all over the world. Plus, we've learned from the release of the files, Epstein made frequent contact with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Barak even admits they were friends for 15 years, until his arrest and alleged death. And truthfully, Barak expresses regret for the friendship. He says he didn't realize the extent of Epstein's crimes until 2019, and that he never witnessed or participated in any illegal activity. But these guys weren't just pen pals. Their conversations, which have been released in the files, make the relationship sound professional, like a financial advisor / business partner of sorts, along with a semblance of a friendship. Barak made frequent trips to Epstein's properties. There was even an apartment that was actually owned by Epstein's brother, Mark, that they refer to as Ehud's apartment. And of course, you can't forget the millions of dollars exchanged between them. Epstein was paid at least around $5 million as a financial advisor to Barak after he left his post as defense minister. And in 2015, a $1 million contribution was made to Barak's limited partnership, SumEB, to invest in an Israeli emergency services technology startup, then known as Reporty Homeland Security, later named Carbine. In 2020, an FBI memo, just unsealed in early 2026, cites a confidential source who claimed they became convinced Epstein was trained as a spy under Barak himself. Of course, we don't have undeniable proof of that. One person's conviction doesn't make it fact. But it does show that those closest to the investigation were connecting the dots. But Mossad is only one piece of the puzzle. If Kiriakou's peddler theory is correct, Epstein wouldn't have been loyal to just one flag. And you see, by looking at the files, Epstein had meetings with active U.S. intelligence. The Wall Street Journal reported that William Burns, who became the director of the CIA in 2021, held 3 meetings with Epstein in 2014. At the time, Burns was the Deputy Secretary of State. The official narrative is that Burns was introduced to Epstein as a financial expert for career advice to transitioning to the private sector. But wait, think about that for a second. Why would one of the nation's most senior diplomats need career advice from a convicted felon with no formal higher education? It just doesn't make sense. It's exactly this kind of documented, inexplicable behavior that pushes researchers away from the rogue financier narrative and toward the intelligence theory. Burns's team says he immediately severed ties once the truth surfaced of Epstein's criminal history, expressing deep regret of connecting with him to begin with. But for a career intelligence official to be completely in the dark about the background of a high-profile felon he was visiting at home, it leaves us with a glaring question. If Epstein wasn't brokering intelligence or elite influence, what exactly was the purpose of the meetings? And then we have the Rothschilds. Epstein's connection to the banking behemoth didn't happen overnight. He and Ghislaine had close ties to Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, using her Martha's Vineyard summer home as a kind of networking hub in the late 90s and early 2000s. It was at this estate he met prominent figures like Alan Dershowitz and Peter Mendelsohn. But what started as networking later expanded into something much harder to explain. In 2015, Epstein's firm Southern Trust Company, Inc. signed a $25 million consulting contract with Ariane de Rothschild, CEO of the Swiss bank Edmund de Rothschild Group. I'm sorry, $25 million. Even top-tier corporate lawyers and specialized accountants would struggle to secure a retainer of that size. Yet Epstein, a man with no formal higher education, no law degree, and a registered sex offender status, got that sum no problem. The bank claims he provided consulting work, estate planning, and business expertise. But investigative researchers have pointed to a very interesting overlap in the timeline. During the same time period, the bank was facing a Justice Department probe under the Obama administration into whether the bank had helped wealthy U.S. citizens evade taxes. Because of this overlap, a prominent theory is that Epstein wasn't acting as a traditional financial consultant, but as a shadow mediator between the Rothschilds and the U.S. government. We don't have the unredacted documents to prove exactly what services he rendered, but regardless of the actual work, the relationship lasted until his 2019 arrest. The Rothschild family swears they had no clue about the trafficking or abuse Epstein was involved with. The same stance pretty much every powerful figure involved with Epstein has taken. So, was Jeffrey Epstein a spy? We may never get an official unredacted document with his job title on it. Espionage by design exists in the shadows. But we don't need to rely on fringe rumors anymore. We just have to look at the documented paper trail. We have a man with no real financial credentials securing a $25 million contract with the Rothschilds. We have a future director of the CIA taking private meetings with a convicted felon. We have a former Israeli prime minister accepting millions in advisory fees. And we have an unprecedented, highly irregular non-prosecution agreement that shielded unnamed co-conspirators from federal charges. The horrific scale of the trafficking is an undeniable fact. But the mechanics of how Epstein was funded, protected, and elevated, that math still doesn't add up under the official story. The deeper we dig into the actual files, the more it looks like we aren't just looking at a criminal. We're looking at an asset.